Have you ever found yourself working late into the night, pushing far beyond your limits, not because the work itself demanded it, but because you felt you had something to prove to others, or maybe even to yourself? That gnawing feeling in your gut that you aren't quite enough unless someone else acknowledges your worth. If you've ever felt the exhausting weight of constantly trying to validate your existence through achievements, approval, or praise, you're not alone. In fact, that pressure is something people have struggled with for thousands of years. But what if I told you there's another way, a philosophy so profound and yet so practical that it can free you from the endless cycle of proving yourself? This is Stoicism, an ancient school of thought that teaches us how to live with purpose, resilience, and unshakable inner confidence. It isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending life's challenges don't exist. Instead, Stoicism offers a clear path to realizing that your value isn't determined by what others think of you, how much you accomplish, or how impressive your resume looks. Your worth is inherent, it comes from within, and once you truly internalize that idea, something extraordinary happens. The need to prove yourself simply evaporates. In this video, we're going to explore 25 powerful Stoic reasons why you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're actionable insights drawn from the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and other Stoic thinkers who faced immense pressure in their own lives, from leading empires to enduring exile. Each reason we'll walk through is a step toward greater peace, self-trust, and emotional freedom. Whether you're dealing with imposter syndrome, social comparison, or that quiet fear of not measuring up, this journey will give you the tools to reclaim your energy and focus on what truly matters. So take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and let's dive in. The first and perhaps most foundational reason you don't need to prove yourself is this: your self-worth is already inherent. It's not something you earn, it's not something you build through accomplishments, and it certainly isn't something someone else can grant or take away from you. The Stoics called this your inherent moral worth, and it's rooted in one simple, profound fact. You are a rational being capable of virtue. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, constantly reminded himself of this in his private journal, which we now know as Meditations. He wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wasn't just talking about willpower, he was identifying the very source of human value. As Emperor of Rome, he had endless opportunities to seek validation through military conquests, grand constructions, or the adoration of the masses. Yet, his writings reveal a man who turned inward, who measured himself not by the statues built in his honor, but by the quality of his character, his justice, his courage, his self-discipline, and his wisdom. Think about what this means for a moment. If your value is inherent, then the entire game of proving yourself is built on a false premise. It's like a fish trying to prove it's wet or a bird trying to prove it can fly. Their nature is already those things. In the same way, your nature as a human being is to be capable of reason and moral choice. That is your starting point. Every time you feel the urge to prove yourself, you're essentially arguing against your own nature, acting as if you lack something you already possess in full. This is why the chase for external validation is so exhausting. You're running a race where the finish line keeps moving, trying to acquire something you've had all along. The relief and freedom that come from this Stoic realization are immense. You can stop performing, you can stop competing for approval, you can simply be, and in that being you are already enough. Your job, your social status, your possessions, these are merely externals, what the Stoics called indifference. They are preferred or dispreferred, but they do not add to or subtract from your core worth. A good reputation is preferred, but it doesn't make you a better person. A failure is dispreferred, but it cannot make you a worse one. Your character, and your character alone, is where your true value resides. This brings us to the second profound reason you can release the need to prove yourself. The opinions of others exist entirely outside your control. Stoic philosophy introduces a crucial mental tool known as the dichotomy of control, which is the practice of rigorously sorting everything in your life into two simple categories: what is up to you and what is not. Your own judgments, your values, your actions, and your character, these are within your control, but the thoughts, opinions, reactions, and judgments of other people, they belong firmly in the category of things you cannot command, no matter how hard you try. Epictetus, a philosopher who began his life as a slave, drove this point home with unflinching clarity. He said, "You can be invincible if you never enter a contest where victory is not within your power." Think about that for a moment. The moment you step into the arena of trying to manage someone else's opinion, you have entered a contest you are guaranteed to lose eventually, because the outcome was never yours to decide. Tying your sense of self-worth to an external opinion is like anchoring your boat to another person's dock. You are handing them the rope and hoping they never decide to untie it. You are making your inner stability dependent on their mood, their biases, their past experiences, and their own insecurities, factors you cannot possibly influence. This is why the pursuit of external validation is a recipe for chronic anxiety. You are investing your energy in a game with no rules and no reliable outcomes. One person might praise you for the very same thing another person condemns you for. Your boss might dismiss an idea you spent weeks on, while a colleague later champions it. This inconsistency isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a demonstration of the fickle and unpredictable nature of external judgment. The Stoics aren't saying we should be indifferent to other people in a cold or callous way. They are advocating for a radical form of emotional efficiency. Why would you pour your precious energy into trying to control the uncontrollable? That energy is far better spent on the one thing you can truly master: your own character and your responses to the world around you. Consider the historical context of these teachers. Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism and conspiracy from senators and rivals within his own court. Seneca, as an advisor to the volatile Emperor Nero, worked in an environment where favor could turn to fury in an instant. They didn't write these principles from a place of abstract theory. They were survival tools for navigating immense pressure and unpredictable human politics. They learned that seeking to control approval was a futile battle. The only sane strategy was to focus on acting with integrity according to their own principles, and to accept whatever reaction followed with equanimity. When you truly internalize this, a weight lifts. You can do your best work, speak your truth, and live by your values, not because you are trying to elicit a specific response, but simply because it is the right thing to do. The opinion that follows is not your business. This is the ultimate liberation from the performance. You are no longer an actor on a stage, anxiously reading the room for applause. You are the author of your own actions, and that is more than enough. Seneca, one of the wisest and wealthiest men in Rome, observed the fickle nature of public opinion with a sort of detached, almost amused clarity. He wrote, "What is the verdict of the majority? It is nothing but a decision in favor of the most plausible of errors." Think about the profound truth in that statement. The approval of the crowd isn't a measure of quality, virtue, or truth. It's often just a measure of what's most popular or easily digestible in a given moment. This is our third powerful reason to let go of the need to prove yourself. The opinion of the masses is inherently unstable and unreliable. Chasing it is like trying to build your house on a foundation of shifting sand. The winds of trend, gossip, and collective mood change direction without warning, and if you've anchored your sense of worth to that, you are setting yourself up for an inevitable collapse. History and our own daily lives are filled with proof of this. An artist is hailed as a genius one season and dismissed as a hack the next. A CEO is celebrated on magazine covers for a revolutionary business model, and then vilified mere months later when market conditions shift. The same public that cheers for you on the way up will often be the first to watch with fascination on the way down. This isn't because people are inherently malicious, it's simply the nature of a crowd. It operates on emotion, on groupthink, on the superficial optics of a situation. The Stoics understood that the crowd praises and blames based on its own ever-changing needs and whims, not based on any objective assessment of your character. Seneca, who served as an advisor to Emperor Nero, saw this volatility firsthand from the most powerful court in the world. He knew that the roars of approval in the arena could turn to jeers in an instant, and that a ruler, or any person who lived for that applause, would be emotionally whipsawed for their entire life. He offered a powerful alternative: to focus instead on earning your own approval, on living in such a way that you could be your own witness and judge. He said, "I shall never be ashamed of citing a bad author if the line is good. The source of the judgment, whether it's from a famous critic or an anonymous crowd, is irrelevant. The only approval that carries any real, lasting weight is the private knowledge that you have acted with integrity, with reason, and in accordance with your principles. When you truly absorb this, you stop performing for an audience whose taste you can't predict and whose loyalty you can't secure. You begin living for an audience of one, your best self. This isn't about arrogance or isolation. It's about a profound and unshakable integrity. The energy you once spent trying to read the room and adjust your actions to win favor is now freed up. You can pour it into the work itself, into the quality of your character, into the depth of your relationships with the few people who truly matter. You are no longer a slave to the trending topic or the popular sentiment. You are, as Epictetus would say, truly free. This leads us directly to the fourth and perhaps most transformative reason for a Stoic: living virtuously is its own reward. The entire pursuit of external validation is built on a simple transaction. You do something in the hope of getting something in return, be it praise, status, or a feeling of superiority. But Stoicism dismantles this transactional view of life at its very core. It proposes that the highest good, the ultimate aim of human life, is to live in accordance with virtue, to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And the beautiful, liberating catch is that the reward for a virtuous action is the action itself. You don't need a trophy, a bonus, or a round of applause. The act of doing the right thing for the right reason is the entire point. It is both the path and the destination. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The reward of a thing well done is to have done it." Let that sink in for a moment. The reward for acting courageously is the experience of courage itself. The reward for choosing justice is the integrity that choice builds within your character. There is no separate prize waiting for you at the finish line, because the running of the race, when done with excellence, is the prize. This philosophy completely reorients your motivation. If you are studying for a test solely to get an A and prove your intelligence to your parents, your motivation is fragile. If you fail to get the A, the entire effort feels wasted and your self-worth takes a hit. But if you are studying with the Stoic virtue of wisdom, cultivating a genuine understanding for its own sake, because it is good to learn and to fulfill your potential as a rational being, then the outcome changes. Whether you get the A or not, the effort was never wasted. You still practiced discipline, you expanded your knowledge, and you strengthened your mind. The value was created the moment you engaged in the virtuous act of learning. The grade is merely an external, a preferred indifferent, but it is not the source of your worth. Consider a more modern example. Imagine two colleagues working on a project. One is motivated by the potential for a promotion and the recognition of their boss. The other is motivated by the desire to do a just and excellent job for its own sake, to contribute to the team, and to solve a problem with wisdom. If the project succeeds, both may get the promotion. But if it fails, or if the boss takes all the credit, the first person is left feeling cheated, bitter, and invalidated. Their entire effort feels pointless. The second person, while perhaps disappointed by the outcome, can still look back and take genuine pride in the quality of their work, their collaborative spirit, and their ethical conduct. They were rewarded the entire time they were working. Their sense of fulfillment was internally generated and is therefore untouchable by external circumstances. This is the profound psychological freedom that Stoicism offers. You are no longer a passive victim of outcomes waiting for the world to validate you. You become the active source of your own satisfaction, finding deep and lasting meaning in the quality of your actions, regardless of how they are received. The need to prove yourself vanishes because you are constantly fulfilling your purpose simply by choosing virtue, moment to moment. The opinion of others, the awards, the social metrics, they all fade into background noise against the clear, resonant sound of your own moral compass. This brings us to the fifth profound Stoic reason to abandon the need for proof, a concept so vital it has echoed through the centuries and found its way into modern psychology. Comparison is indeed the thief of joy. Stoicism teaches us that measuring your worth against another person's achievements, possessions, or status is a fundamental error in judgment, a direct path to anxiety and dissatisfaction. It's a distraction from your own path and a surrender of your inner peace. The philosopher Epictetus, who knew the harsh realities of being a slave in a society obsessed with status and power, addressed this with his characteristic bluntness. He advised his students to focus solely on what is their own mind, their own judgments, their own use of impressions. Everything else, including another person's wealth, career, or social standing, belongs to the category of things not up to us and is therefore not a proper subject for our anxiety or envy. When you constantly compare your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20, you are not only doing yourself a grave disservice, you are ignoring the fundamental Stoic practice of the dichotomy of control. You are pouring your mental energy into analyzing, coveting, or resenting things that are utterly outside your command. You cannot control who gets promoted faster than you. You cannot control who was born into greater wealth or natural talent. You cannot control the random twists of fortune that benefit one person and hinder another. What you can control is your response. You can control your effort, your attitude, your perseverance, and your commitment to your own principles. Epictetus would argue that the person you are so busy comparing yourself to is actually irrelevant to your moral purpose. Your job is not to be better than anyone else. Your job is to be better than you were yesterday, to make full use of the faculties you have been given. Think about the sheer mental energy wasted in the act of comparison, scrolling through social media and feeling a pang of inadequacy because a former colleague is on vacation in a place you've always wanted to visit. Attending a reunion and calculating your own life's value based on the job titles and relationship milestones of your peers. This constant benchmarking is exhausting because it's a game you can never win. There will always be someone who has more, does more, or seems to be more. The Stoic alternative is not to bury your head in the sand, but to radically refocus your attention. Instead of looking sideways at others, look inward at your own progress and forward at your own potential. Your only legitimate measure of success is whether you are living in alignment with your virtues. Are you acting with integrity today? Are you facing your challenges with courage? Are you treating others with justice and yourself with compassion? This is the only scorecard that matters. The freedom that comes from releasing comparison is immense. It allows you to genuinely celebrate the success of others without feeling that it diminishes your own. Their good fortune is simply an external event, a preferred indifferent that has nothing to do with your own journey or your inherent worth. You can admire someone's skill without needing to possess it yourself. You can appreciate someone's beautiful home without feeling that your own is insufficient. You are released from the tyranny of the highlight reel and can engage with the raw, real, and meaningful work of crafting your own character. Your path is yours alone with its unique challenges and triumphs. The moment you stop comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's curated performance, you reclaim your joy, your focus, and your energy for the things that truly count. Reason 6 centers on a principle that cuts through the noise of modern self-promotion. Your actions speak louder than your words. In a world that often encourages us to craft a personal brand and loudly announce our every achievement, Stoicism offers a quieter, more powerful alternative. The Stoics believed that true character isn't declared, it is demonstrated through consistent virtuous action. Boasting, seeking credit, or constantly explaining your worth actually undermines it. It signals a lack of inner confidence, a need for others to confirm what you should already know to be true about yourself. The goal is not to be seen as a good person, but to be a good person, and to trust that the quality of your actions will, in time, reveal your character far more authentically than any speech ever could. No historical figure embodies this Stoic ideal more completely than Cato the Younger. Living in the final turbulent years of the Roman Republic, Cato was a senator known for his unbending integrity and his fierce opposition to the corruption and rising tyranny of figures like Julius Caesar. But his power didn't come from fiery speeches or clever public relations, though he was a capable orator. It came from a lifetime of action so consistent with his stated principles that he became a living symbol of republican virtue. He didn't need to tell people he was honest. He simply was honest, even when it was massively inconvenient or put him at a disadvantage. He didn't need to give lectures on justice. He applied the law with an impartiality that frustrated both his enemies and his allies. His life was his argument. There's a famous story that perfectly illustrates this. During a heated political trial, Cato was prosecuting a case against some of Caesar's allies. In the middle of the proceedings, a messenger arrived and handed Cato a note. His opponents, assuming it was some secret evidence that could help their side, insisted that he read it aloud to the entire court. Cato, without a word of objection, simply read the note. It was a love letter from his half-sister. The courtroom erupted in laughter, and Cato's case was momentarily humiliated. But he didn't get flustered, he didn't try to explain himself, and he didn't apologize. He simply handed the note to the person next to him and continued with his prosecution as if nothing had happened. His utter lack of shame and his refusal to be embarrassed by something harmless demonstrated a self-possession so complete that it silenced the room far more powerfully than any retort could have. The message was clear. His character was so firmly established that a momentary embarrassment couldn't touch it. His actions, his calm demeanor in that awkward situation, spoke volumes about his inner fortitude. This is the core of the lesson. When you feel the urge to prove yourself through words, to list your accomplishments in a meeting, to subtly remind others of your contributions, or to defend your reputation against minor slights, you are often weakening your position. You are inviting debate and scrutiny on terms that are external and superficial. The Stoic alternative is to pour that same energy into the action itself. Do the work with excellence because it is right to do so. Act with integrity because that is who you are. Be helpful without announcing your helpfulness. Be reliable without having to promise reliability. This consistent practice builds a reputation that is rock solid because it is earned, not manufactured. It is a reputation that exists even when no one is watching, which makes it authentic and undeniable. People may argue with your words, but they have a much harder time arguing with a long pattern of honorable behavior. Your deeds become your most eloquent testimony. Reason number 7 invites us to examine one of the most seductive and ultimately empty pursuits, the desire for fame. In our modern world, this craving has been amplified to an unprecedented degree, with social media offering the tantalizing promise of instant recognition and a platform for millions. But the Stoics saw this drive for renown for what it truly is, a hollow chase that pulls us away from our true purpose and into the realm of vanity and anxiety. Marcus Aurelius, a man who arguably had more fame and power than almost anyone in his era, consistently warned himself against its allure. In his private meditations, he didn't bask in his own glory. Instead, he practiced a form of negative visualization, mentally fast-forwarding through time to see the inevitable end of all reputations. He wrote, "How quickly all things disappear in the universe, the bodies themselves, but in time the remembrance of them." He would remind himself that even the most celebrated names, the heroes and emperors of the past, are now just faint echoes in a history book, their struggles and triumphs reduced to a few lines of text. The applause of the crowd dies the moment you leave the stage. The glowing newspaper article lines a birdcage the next day. The trending topic is replaced by a new scandal within hours. To build your life around capturing something so fleeting is, from a Stoic perspective, a profound misallocation of your one precious life. You are trading your finite time and energy for a currency that loses its value almost the moment it is printed. This isn't a call for cynicism, but for a sober and liberating realism. The pursuit of fame is hollow because it is focused on the aftermath of an action, how it will be perceived, rather than the action itself. It shifts your motivation from the internal, where you have control, to the external, where you have none. An artist who creates primarily for fame is no longer focused on the integrity of the art, but on its potential for virality. A leader who governs for their legacy makes decisions based on polls and popularity, not on principle and justice. This external focus inevitably leads to a fragile and anxious existence. Your sense of self becomes contingent on the fickle and often irrational opinions of others. You are constantly performing, constantly managing perceptions, constantly afraid that the spotlight will move on. Marcus Aurelius had the entire Roman machinery of propaganda at his disposal to cement his fame for eternity. Yet he consistently turned away from it, focusing instead on his duty, his character, and his immediate responsibilities. He understood that a good reputation is a potential byproduct of virtuous action, but it can never be the goal. The goal is the virtue itself. When you internalize this, a remarkable shift occurs. You are freed from the exhausting performance. You can do your work, live your life, and contribute to your community simply because it is the right thing to do. The work becomes its own reward. The act of helping another person becomes meaningful in the moment, regardless of whether anyone else sees it. This is how you build a life of substance rather than just a biography of accolades. Your energy is invested in things that have intrinsic value. Your relationships, your character, your contributions, rather than being siphoned off into the black hole of public opinion. In the end, the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, known only to you and a few cherished others, is infinitely more durable and fulfilling than the loud but fleeting roar of the crowd. Reason 8 invites us to consider what we are truly trading when we choose the path of constant validation. Stoicism presents a clear and compelling alternative. The cultivation of inner peace, a state the Greeks called ataraxia, is infinitely more valuable than any fleeting external achievement or acknowledgement. This isn't just a nice idea, it's a practical calculation. Every moment you spend crafting an image, managing perceptions, or anxiously awaiting a reward is a moment stolen from your own tranquility. The pursuit of proof is by its very nature a state of unrest. It keeps you leaning into the future, hooked on a potential outcome you cannot control, and therefore vulnerable to disappointment, frustration, and anxiety. Ataraxia, on the other hand, is a state of serene calmness and imperturbability that is available to you right now, regardless of your circumstances. It is the psychological reward for finally ceasing to fight battles that were never yours to win. Think of it this way: external validation is like drinking salt water. The more you get, the thirstier you become. It might feel satisfying for a fleeting moment, but it ultimately dehydrates your soul, leaving you more desperate for the next fix. Each accomplishment that was meant to finally make you feel enough simply raises the bar higher. The promotion you worked for 3 years to achieve feels normal after 3 months, and suddenly you're eyeing the next title. The social media post that garnered 1,000 likes makes you anxious when the next one only gets 200. This cycle is a form of self-created suffering. Inner peace, however, is like a deep, cool spring within you. It isn't dependent on the weather outside. It doesn't dry up during a drought of praise or overflow during a monsoon of success. It is a constant, reliable source of nourishment that allows you to engage with the world from a place of wholeness, not lack. The Stoics weren't passive hermits advocating for a life devoid of ambition. They were incredibly active, engaged individuals. Seneca was a playwright and a political advisor. Marcus Aurelius led military campaigns, but they engaged with the world from this fortified inner citadel of peace. Their actions were motivated by duty and virtue, not by a frantic need to be seen or validated. This is the critical distinction. When your actions spring from a place of inner calm, they are more measured, more effective, and more authentic. You aren't making decisions based on a fear of how you'll be perceived. You're making them based on what is right and rational. This leads to a profound consistency of character that itself becomes a source of deep, lasting confidence. The peace isn't found by avoiding life's challenges, but by changing your relationship to them. You can give a presentation and feel calm because your goal was to communicate ideas clearly, a virtue of wisdom, not to be hailed as the smartest person in the room. You can face criticism and remain steady because your self-assessment isn't shattered by someone else's opinion. This unshakable calm becomes your greatest asset, allowing you to navigate the storms of life with a clarity and resilience that those who are desperate for approval can never access. The trade is clear. You can have the anxiety of perpetual performance, or you can have the profound peace of self-possession. Stoicism argues that the latter is the true marker of a life well lived. This leads us to a ninth, deeply liberating Stoic truth. You are not your resume, your job title, or your list of accomplishments. Your identity and your inherent worth exist completely separate from your successes and your failures. Stoicism draws a clear, firm line between what you do and who you are. Who you are is a rational being capable of virtue, and that core self remains constant, unwavering, whether you are at the peak of your career or facing a devastating setback. Seneca explored this idea with profound depth, often writing about the fickleness of fortune and the folly of tying our self-concept to its unpredictable whims. He observed that life's circumstances are like the weather, constantly changing, entirely outside our control, and utterly incapable of altering the fundamental nature of the sky behind the clouds. Your true self is that sky. The successes and failures are just passing storms and sunny spells. Seneca drives this point home in his letters, writing, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." At first glance, this seems to be about materialism, but its application to achievement is even more powerful. The person who feels poor in spirit is not the one who has experienced a professional failure. It is the one who craves the next achievement to feel whole. It is the one who believes they are their accomplishments, and therefore, without a constant stream of them, they feel they are nothing. This creates a terrifyingly fragile existence. If you believe you are your vice presidency, what are you if the company downsizes? If you believe you are your championship trophy, who are you when a new winner is crowned? You set yourself up for an identity crisis with every shift of fortune. The Stoic practice is to consciously decouple your sense of self from these externals. See your achievements for what they are, favorable outcomes that resulted from a combination of your effort, your virtue, and a good deal of luck and circumstance. You can take pride in the effort and the virtue you displayed, as those are within your control, but the outcome itself is not you. Similarly, see your failures for what they are, unfavorable outcomes. They can provide valuable feedback on your methods or circumstances, but they say nothing about your core worth. A failed business venture does not make you a failure as a human being. It makes you a human being who attempted something difficult and this time it did not work out. The distinction is everything. Imagine two athletes who both failed to qualify for the Olympics. One has built their entire identity around being an Olympian. For them, this failure is catastrophic. It isn't just a lost competition, it is the annihilation of their self. They are plunged into a deep depression because they feel they have lost who they are. The other athlete, guided by a Stoic mindset, also feels the sharp sting of disappointment. They wanted to go to the Olympics deeply, but their identity is rooted in being a disciplined, courageous, and resilient person who loves their sport. The failure to qualify is a severe blow to their preferred plan, but it does not touch their core self. They can grieve the loss, learn from the experience, and then channel those virtues into a new chapter. Perhaps coaching, a different competition, or a completely different pursuit because their worth was never contingent on that single outcome. They haven't lost themselves. This is the profound psychological resilience that Seneca points us toward. By refusing to be defined by your achievements, you make yourself invulnerable to the roller coaster of fortune. You can strive, compete, and create with immense passion, but you do so from a place of unshakable inner stability, knowing that no result can ever add to or subtract from the value you were born with. And here we arrive at a truth that gets to the very root of the problem. The relentless need to prove yourself almost never originates from a place of strength or confidence. Instead, it's almost always a symptom of an internal wound, a deep-seated insecurity that whispers you are not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough as you are. This impulse is a coping mechanism, a desperate attempt to quiet that inner critic by gathering enough external evidence to shout it down. But Stoicism offers a far more effective and permanent solution. Rather than trying to cover up the internal doubt with external noise, you must turn inward and heal the doubt itself through self-reflection and the deliberate cultivation of virtue. Think of it like trying to fix a leaky boat by constantly bailing out water with a bucket. The need for proof is that frantic bailing. It's an exhausting, temporary response to the real problem, which is the hole in the hull. The Stoic approach is to calmly find the leak and patch it. The insecurity is the leak. It might be a fear of being seen as incompetent, a lingering sense of inadequacy from past criticisms, or a belief that you are only worthy of love or respect if you are achieving something extraordinary. The frantic collecting of achievements, approvals, and accolades is just you bailing water. It might keep you afloat for a while, but you'll never be able to relax. You'll always be on alert for the next wave, the next bit of water to seep in. Stoicism asks you to stop bailing and start repairing. This repair work is done through the twin tools of rigorous self-examination and virtuous action. Marcus Aurelius constantly engaged in this, using his journal as a mirror to examine his own mind without flinching. He didn't write to glorify himself. He wrote to check his own ego, to question his motives, and to reinforce his commitment to his principles. He might ask himself, why am I so upset by that person's criticism? What insecure part of me is triggered by their words? Is my desire to lead this project rooted in a genuine desire to contribute, or is it a need to be seen as the hero? This kind of honest introspection shines a light on the source of the insecurity. You begin to see that the feeling of not enough is just a thought, a judgment you have accepted as truth, not an objective fact about your being. Once you've identified the thought, you can challenge it not with words but with action. This is where virtue comes in. If you feel insecure about your competence, the antidote isn't to boast about your skills. It's to diligently practice and study, embodying the virtue of wisdom. If you feel insecure about your courage, the solution isn't to tell stories of your bravery. It's to consciously choose to do the difficult thing you know is right, thus embodying the virtue of courage itself. Each time you act with integrity instead of cutting corners to look good, you are patching the leak. Each time you choose to be kind instead of seeking credit, you are reinforcing the hull. You are building a self-concept based on solid, observable evidence of your own character, not on the fleeting and fickle opinions of others. This process effectively moves you from a fragile external locus of esteem to a robust internal one. The insecure person needs the world to constantly tell them they are okay. The Stoic, through self-knowledge and virtue, learns to provide that assurance from within. The need to prove yourself diminishes not because you have finally proven it to everyone, but because you have finally convinced the only person whose opinion on the matter truly counts, yourself. You realize you were enough all along, you just hadn't been listening. The quiet confidence that comes from this self-repair is unshakable because it's built on the bedrock of your own actions, not the sand of public approval. Now let's turn to a reason that can instantly snap our priorities into sharp, clear focus. Life is short, and your time is far too precious to waste on proving yourself to others. The Stoics had a powerful practice for this called Memento Mori, a Latin phrase that translates to remember you must die. This might sound morbid or dark at first glance, but for the Stoics it was anything but. It was the ultimate tool for creating urgency, clarity, and profound appreciation for the present moment. It's not about dwelling on death with fear. It's about harnessing the awareness of life's finitude to instantly strip away the trivial and concentrate on what is truly essential. Imagine you received a definitive diagnosis that you had only 1 year left to live. How would your priorities shift? Suddenly, the opinion of that difficult coworker wouldn't just be less important, it would become completely irrelevant. The anxiety over whether you impressed everyone at the party would vanish. The desperate need to curate a perfect social media image to prove your happiness would seem like a ridiculous waste of your remaining precious days. You would stop performing, you would start living. You would focus on love, on connection, on creating meaningful memories, on finally writing that book or taking that trip, not for the photo album but for the experience itself. Memento Mori is the practice of asking yourself that question not once in a lifetime, but every single day, to continually refine your focus and ensure you are spending your limited time on what genuinely matters to you. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, wrote with stunning clarity about this very human mistake. He observed, "It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much of it." He wasn't talking about people who die young. He was talking about people who reach old age having never truly lived because they frittered away their years seeking approval, chasing status, and trying to prove their worth to an audience that was barely paying attention. He describes lives lost to busyness, not in the pursuit of meaningful goals, but in the empty performance of social expectations. We give our best hours to jobs we hate, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't even like. This, to Seneca, is the true tragedy, not an early death, but a life squandered. When you internalize Memento Mori, the compulsion to prove yourself begins to look like what it is, a distraction. It's a game of make-believe that steals your most finite and non-renewable resource, time. Every minute spent worrying about how you are perceived is a minute you are not spending on loving your family, on developing a skill you're passionate about, on enjoying a beautiful day, or on contributing to something larger than yourself. The Stoics ask us to measure our actions against this ultimate metric. Is this argument worth winning if it costs me an hour of peace? Is this purchase worth making if it requires months of stressful work to impress acquaintances? Is this goal truly mine, or is it a script I've absorbed from society about what a successful life should look like? This practice bestows a tremendous sense of freedom. It allows you to gracefully opt out of competitions you never really wanted to enter. It gives you permission to say no to invitations that drain you, to abandon projects that don't align with your values, and to stop anxiously monitoring your social standing. Your energy, now reclaimed, can be poured into the pursuits that bring you authentic joy and fulfillment. Your legacy won't be a list of accomplishments meant to wow strangers. It will be the quality of the relationships you nurtured, the integrity of your actions, and the inner peace you cultivated. Remembering that your time is limited isn't a cause for panic. It's the key to unlocking a life of purpose, lived unapologetically on your own terms, free from the exhausting burden of performance. This brings us to a principle that reverses the entire equation of social validation. Authenticity is infinitely more powerful than approval. Stoicism doesn't just suggest that you can be yourself, it posits that being your true, rational self is the highest form of living. Conforming to others' expectations, molding yourself to fit in, or performing a role to gain acceptance is not just exhausting, it's a betrayal of your own nature and your capacity for reason. The goal is to live in accordance with your own proherses, your faculty of moral choice, not to become a mirror reflecting the desires and prejudices of the crowd. This kind of authenticity requires immense courage, especially when it invites criticism or social exclusion, but the Stoics argued that the power and peace it generates are worth any temporary discomfort. Consider the life of Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism himself. Before he became a philosopher, Zeno was a wealthy merchant. During a voyage, his ship sank and he lost everything. Wandering into a bookstore in Athens, he was introduced to the teachings of Socrates through Xenophon's writings. Captivated, he asked the bookseller where he could find men like Socrates. Just then, the famous Cynic philosopher Crates happened to be walking by. The bookseller pointed and said, "Follow that man." Zeno did exactly that, abandoning his former life and social standing to become a student of Crates, embracing a philosophy that valued virtue over wealth and simplicity over status. He didn't just adopt a new set of ideas, he radically transformed his entire way of living to align with them, often facing ridicule for his austere habits and unconventional teachings. He chose authenticity over the comfortable, approved path of his former social class, and in doing so, he founded a school of thought that would endure for millennia. His power came not from social acceptance, but from the unwavering integrity of his convictions. This theme echoes powerfully in the life of Musonius Rufus, the teacher of Epictetus. When Emperor Nero exiled him to the barren island of Gyara as a punishment for his philosophical teachings, Musonius didn't see it as a defeat. He saw it as an opportunity to practice Stoicism in its purest form. Instead of despairing over the loss of his comfortable life in Rome, the approval of his students, or his social standing, he embraced his new reality with authentic engagement. He began tilling the rocky soil, growing his own food, and even started teaching philosophy to the other inhabitants of the island. His authenticity, his commitment to living his philosophy regardless of his circumstances, turned a place of punishment into a place of purpose. His power and influence grew precisely because he refused to be diminished by external judgment. He demonstrated that your environment cannot dictate your character unless you allow it to. This is the profound shift in perspective Stoicism offers. The approval of others is passive and fleeting, you receive it. Authenticity, however, is active and enduring, you generate it from within. When you choose to be authentic, you move from a position of weakness, waiting for permission to be yourself, to a position of strength, where your sense of self is self-generated and self-sustained. This doesn't mean being stubborn or refusing to adapt. Stoic authenticity is about being true to your core principles, not your every passing whim. It means you can be flexible in your methods, kind, diplomatic, and collaborative while remaining rock solid in your values. You might change your tactics to work effectively with a team, but you won't compromise your honesty to win a deal. You might listen openly to constructive criticism, but you won't abandon your deeply held beliefs to avoid an argument. The magnetic power of this kind of authenticity is undeniable. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who aren't desperately seeking validation. Your words carry more weight because they are backed by consistent action. Your presence becomes calming because it is genuine, not performative. While the approval seeker is constantly adjusting their sails to catch the changing winds of popular opinion, the authentic person is the anchor itself, steady, reliable, and unmoved by the storms around them. This doesn't make you invulnerable to criticism, but it does make you immune to being defined by it. The critic's words become data about their perspective, not a verdict on your worth. You can listen, evaluate, and accept what is useful without ever feeling the need to dismantle your core self to make them happy. In the end, a life lived authentically, in alignment with virtue, creates a legacy of integrity that no amount of popular approval can ever match. And this brings us to a sobering yet deeply freeing realization. A tremendous amount of what the world calls success is not the direct result of merit or hard work, but is instead determined by luck, chance, and circumstances entirely outside an individual's control. The Stoics labeled these forces externals, and they include everything from being born into a wealthy family and having the right connections to simply being in the right place at the right time when an opportunity arises. To base your entire sense of self-worth on achieving external success is therefore to build your identity on a foundation of randomness. It is an irrational and exhausting endeavor because you are trying to control and take personal credit for outcomes that are, in large part, a product of fortune's whims. Consider two aspiring musicians of equal talent, dedication, and virtue. One spends years playing in small clubs, uploading videos online, and barely scraping by, their incredible music heard by only a handful of people. The other musician posts one video that, through the mysterious algorithms of social media, gets randomly picked up by a celebrity and goes viral overnight. The second musician is suddenly hailed as an overnight success, their talent proven to the world. But was the second musician more talented or more deserving? Not necessarily. They were the beneficiary of luck, a cascade of external events they did not orchestrate. The first musician, through no fault of their own or lack of effort, remains unknown. If the first musician internalizes this outcome as proof of their inferiority, they are making a grave error in judgment. Their worth as an artist is inherent in their craft and their dedication to it, not in the fickle audience of an algorithm. The ancient Stoics were intensely aware of this dynamic. Seneca, despite his enormous wealth and power, wrote extensively about the blind nature of fortune, often depicting her as a goddess who capriciously gives and takes away. He argued that a wise person enjoys the gifts of fortune, good health, wealth, a good reputation, while never mistaking them for personal accomplishments or believing they are permanent. He advised us to count her gifts as loans, not possessions, meaning we should hold them lightly without allowing them to define us. A modern-day promotion might come because you worked diligently for years, a factor within your control. But it might also come because a more senior candidate suddenly resigned to care for a sick relative, a factor entirely outside your control. To attribute that promotion solely to your own excellence is to ignore the role fortune played. The Stoic approach is to acknowledge your effort with humility while also recognizing the external conditions that made the outcome possible. This prevents the arrogance that often accompanies success, and more importantly, it inoculates you against the crushing despair of failure when fortune inevitably turns. When you grasp this concept, the entire project of proving yourself through worldly achievements begins to look like a flawed strategy. You are essentially trying to use a meter stick of luck to measure your own height. Your true height, your character, your virtues, your intentions remains constant, regardless of whether fortune's random measure reads 5 feet or 7 feet on any given day. This is why the Stoics urged us to focus exclusively on what they called the chief task, our voluntary actions, our judgments, and our responses to events. Did you act with integrity in that business negotiation? That is a success, regardless of whether you won the contract. Did you treat your employees with fairness and respect? That is an achievement, even if the company ultimately fails due to an unforeseen market crash. These internal victories are the only ones that are truly 100% yours. They cannot be given to you by luck, and they cannot be taken away by bad luck. Basing your self-worth on these internal accomplishments is rational, stable, and entirely within your power. It frees you from the emotional roller coaster of external validation and allows you to engage with the world not as a desperate gambler trying to prove your worth, but as a person of character, playing the game of life with integrity, regardless of the unpredictable score. This profound shift toward simplicity directly addresses the need to prove yourself by fundamentally shrinking the arena in which that battle is fought. When your desires are few and focused only on what is essential and within your control, you dramatically reduce the number of things you feel compelled to demonstrate to the world. There's no need to prove you can afford a luxury car if you have no desire for one. There's no urge to showcase your sophisticated taste in designer clothing if you find simple, functional attire perfectly sufficient. The Stoic practice of minimizing wants isn't about embracing poverty or self-denial. It's about achieving a state of conscious independence from the endless cycle of acquisition and display that fuels so much social competition. By wanting less, you automatically have less to prove. Your sense of adequacy becomes untethered from the ever-expanding list of things society tells you should want. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and owned very little even after gaining his freedom, provided perhaps the most practical framework for this. He instructed his students to make a clear and rigorous distinction between what is truly needed and what is merely wanted. He said, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it." For Epictetus, the ultimate goal was inner freedom, and he saw unchecked desire as the primary chain that binds us to the opinions and the whims of fortune. He advised us to regularly practice poverty, not to suffer, but to prove to ourselves that we can be happy with very little. By consciously choosing to eat a simple meal, wear old clothes, or abstain from a purchase, we engage in a powerful exercise. We are not proving our austerity to others. We are proving to ourselves that our happiness and self-worth are resilient enough to thrive without external props. This self-confirmation is the antidote to the need for external validation. Imagine two people attending a high school reunion. One has spent the weeks beforehand anxiously researching luxury car rentals and buying a new, expensive outfit, rehearsing stories about their important job. They are operating from a place of want. They want to be seen as successful. They want to impress. They want to prove they turned out better than their peers. Their entire evening is a performance, and their emotional state is entirely dependent on how that performance is received. The other person, guided by a Stoic sense of simplicity, has no such wants. They need only to be themselves, to connect with old friends with genuine curiosity, to share stories authentically, and to enjoy the evening for what it is. They wear clothes they already own and feel comfortable in. They have no script to follow because they feel no need to prove a single thing. Their contentment is not a performance, it is their reality. The first person is playing a high-stakes game where they can only lose. The second is simply present and therefore cannot lose at all. This contentment with little creates a remarkable kind of invulnerability. When your happiness is not contingent on owning specific things, achieving certain titles, or receiving particular acknowledgements, you become incredibly difficult to manipulate or threaten. A boss cannot dangle a promotion to force you into unethical behavior if you are content without the promotion. A social circle cannot pressure you into keeping up with trends if you are genuinely uninterested in those trends. Your enough becomes a small, manageable, and internally defined target that you can consistently hit through your own choices, rather than a distant, moving goalpost controlled by the culture around you. This is the deep, unshakable security that comes from distinguishing needs from wants. Your self-esteem is no longer tied to your ability to acquire the wants. It is rooted in the quiet confidence that your needs, virtue, reason, connection are always within your grasp. In the whirlwind of daily life, few things feel more personal than criticism or more validating than praise. We are wired to seek one and avoid the other, often allowing these external judgments to dictate our emotional weather. Yet Stoicism offers a radical, almost superhuman-sounding alternative to meet both with the same calm, level-headed detachment. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or cold. It's about achieving a profound understanding that neither the critic's barbs nor the admirer's cheers have any bearing on your fundamental worth. Your character is not a sculpture to be chiseled by public opinion, but a fortress whose walls are built from your own choices and virtues. This practice of equanimity, of maintaining an even mind, is our 15th powerful reason why you can finally stop trying to prove yourself. No one embodied this Stoic ideal under more immense pressure than Marcus Aurelius. As the Emperor of Rome, he was the most public figure in the known world, subject to constant scrutiny, vicious gossip from political rivals, and the unrealistic expectations of millions. He could have easily spent every waking hour trying to manage his public image, to prove his greatness through grand monuments and propaganda. Instead, he turned inward using his private journal, now known to us as Meditations, as a training ground for his mind. He wrote to himself, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This single sentence cuts to the heart of the paradox. Why would we, the experts on our own intentions and efforts, grant a stranger's fleeting judgment more weight than our own reasoned self-assessment? Marcus constantly prepared himself for the inevitability of unfair criticism. He didn't wait for it to happen and then react. He pre-rehearsed his calm response through negative visualization. He would consider the worst things people could say about him, not to feed paranoia, but to drain those potential words of their emotional power. By imagining the criticism beforehand, he was inoculating himself against the sting of surprise and outrage. When the real criticism eventually came, his internal response was already prepared. "Ah, there it is. I expected this. This changes nothing about who I am or what I must do." He viewed slander and insults not as personal attacks to be avenged, but as reflections of the other person's own ignorance, pain, or flawed character. He advised himself to see a critic as a barking dog. The noise is unpleasant, but it doesn't require you to get down on all fours and bark back. Your path is simply to continue walking your road with purpose. But Stoic equanimity is a two-way street, and its most sophisticated test often comes not from handling criticism, but from handling praise. We often think the goal is to become thick-skinned against negative feedback, but the intoxicating lure of positive feedback can be far more dangerous to your inner stability. Praise can be a subtle trap, reinforcing the very ego and external dependency that Stoicism seeks to dismantle. Marcus Aurelius was wary of the cheers of the mob in the Roman arena. He knew that the same crowd shouting his praises today could be shouting for his head tomorrow. He understood that praise is just as external and unreliable as criticism. If you accept the praise as proof of your worth, you must also, by default, accept the criticism as proof of your worthlessness. This places your entire self-concept in the hands of others, making you an emotional puppet on a string. The Stoic practice, therefore, is to receive praise with the same detached gratitude with which you might receive good weather. It's pleasant, it's preferable, but it is not a verdict on your soul. Thank the person for their kindness, then immediately return your focus to your own internal scorecard. Did you act with virtue? Did you do the right thing to the best of your ability? That is the only evaluation that holds any weight. A modern example might be an author who receives a glowing 5-star review calling them a genius. The Stoic-minded author would acknowledge the review with gratitude, but would refuse to internalize the label genius. They know that the next review might be a 1-star pan calling them a talentless hack. If they believed the first review, they are obligated to believe the second. Instead, they focus on the elements within their control, the discipline it took to write the book, the integrity of the story they wanted to tell, and the courage it took to put it out into the world. Those virtues remain true regardless of the reviewer's opinion. This balanced approach creates an unshakable center of gravity. You are no longer thrown into despair by a negative performance review at work because your sense of competence is based on your own knowledge of your effort and dedication. Similarly, you are not sent into a state of arrogant bliss by a promotion or a bonus because you recognize the role of luck, timing, and other external factors in that outcome. You can appreciate the good without becoming addicted to it and navigate the bad without being broken by it. Your emotional state becomes your own responsibility and your own creation, independent of the praise or blame swirling around you. This is the ultimate freedom from the performative dance, the freedom to simply do good work, live by your principles, and let the opinions of the world, both good and bad, wash over you without ever knocking you off your feet. The 16th reason strikes at the very heart of what it means to leave a mark on the world, reframing the entire concept of legacy itself. Stoicism teaches that your true and lasting impact has nothing to do with the monuments you build, the wealth you accumulate, or the titles you hold. These are all externals, subject to the erosion of time and the whims of fortune. What endures, what truly constitutes a legacy, is the quality of your character, the moral integrity you demonstrate in your actions, the courage you show in difficult times, and the wisdom and justice you extend to others. This perspective fundamentally redefines success, shifting the focus from what you accomplish in the world to who you are as a person within it. The pressure to prove yourself through superficial markers of achievement simply melts away when you realize that the only thing you are really here to build is your own virtue, a project that is entirely internal and completely within your control. History provides a powerful contrast that illustrates this point. Consider two figures from ancient Rome, the Emperor Hadrian and Epictetus the philosopher. Hadrian left behind incredible physical achievements: Hadrian's Wall in Britain, the Pantheon in Rome, magnificent villas, and a vast, well-administered empire. These were monumental accomplishments meant to secure his legacy for eternity. And yet, for all that stone and power, what do we truly know of Hadrian's character? His legacy is one of structures and administration, impressive but impersonal. Now consider Epictetus. He was a former slave who owned almost nothing. He built no walls, commanded no legions, and left no grand buildings. He held a simple lectureship and spoke to students in a modest room. His legacy is not made of stone, it is made of ideas. It is the profound impact he had on the minds of his students, the wisdom recorded in the discourses and in Enchiridion, and the countless lives across 2 millennia that have been changed by applying his teachings. His character, his resilience, his integrity, his unwavering focus on what is within our power is what endured. His is a living legacy passed from person to person, while the stones of emperors slowly crumble. This understanding is incredibly liberating for your daily life. You don't need to prove you are important by landing a cover story or earning a corner office to secure your legacy. Your legacy is being written every single day in the way you treat the barrister who gets your order wrong, in the integrity you show when no one is watching, in the patience you extend to a frustrated child, and in the courage it takes to stand up for what is right even when it is unpopular. These moments of moral choice are the bricks and mortar of a Stoic legacy. They are accessible to everyone regardless of their social status, wealth, or formal power. A CEO and a stay-at-home parent are on completely equal footing when it comes to building this kind of enduring impact. Both have endless daily opportunities to act with kindness, justice, courage, and self-discipline. When you internalize that your character is your legacy, the noisy world of social proof becomes almost irrelevant. The anxious drive to post your every achievement online for validation is replaced by a quiet, steady commitment to doing the next right thing. You stop asking, "How will this look on my resume?" and start asking, "Is this action in alignment with my values?" This doesn't mean you abandon ambition or stop striving for excellence in your work. It means your primary motivation shifts. You strive for excellence not to prove your worth to others, but because doing your best is a virtuous act in itself, an expression of self-respect and a contribution to the common good. The external results of your work, the promotions, the awards, the recognition become preferred indifference. They are nice to have, but they are not the point. The point is the person you become in the process of doing the work. That person and the ethical imprint they leave on everyone they touch is the only legacy that ultimately matters and the only one that time cannot erase. This brings us to a perspective so vast it can instantly shrink our personal anxieties down to size. The universe itself is profoundly indifferent to your ego. The Stoics practiced what modern thinkers might call cosmic perspective, a conscious effort to zoom out from the narrow concerns of our daily lives and view ourselves within the context of the infinite cosmos. From this vantage point, our desperate scrambles for status, recognition, and proof of our importance are revealed for what they are: tiny, temporary dramas playing out on a speck of dust floating in an unimaginably vast and ancient universe. This realization isn't meant to make us feel insignificant or nihilistic. Rather, it's designed to foster a deep and liberating humility, dissolving the ego-driven compulsions that cause so much of our suffering. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this practice. As the Emperor of Rome, he held a position that could easily have fed an enormous ego. He had immense power, wealth, and the adoration of millions. Yet he constantly reminded himself of his true scale. He would write in his journal, "Think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it you are." He wasn't belittling himself, he was engaging in a spiritual exercise to maintain balance. He would visualize the entire sweep of history, all the empires that had risen and fallen, all the billions of lives lived and forgotten, and then place his own brief moment within that context. His urgent political problems, the criticisms of his rivals, his desire to be remembered as a great emperor, all of it seemed to quiet down when held against the silent, endless backdrop of space and time. This exercise is incredibly powerful for dismantling the need to prove yourself. That presentation you're nervous about, that argument you feel you must win, that social slight you can't stop ruminating on, how important will any of it be in 100 years? In 1000, the cosmos will continue its silent expansion, completely unaffected by whether you received that promotion or impressed those people at the party. This isn't a call to inaction, it's a call to right-sized action. It allows you to engage with your life passionately, but without the weight of cosmic importance attached to every outcome. You can do your best work not because you need to etch your name into history, but because doing good work is a worthy way to spend your brief, assigned moment in the grand scheme. The pressure to perform is replaced by the quiet purpose of participation. This cosmic perspective also nurtures a genuine humility that is entirely different from self-deprecation. It's not about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. When you truly grasp that you are a small but conscious part of an immense unfolding whole, your personal ego naturally recedes. You become less concerned with being the star of the show and more interested in playing your part well within the larger production. A humble gardener doesn't need the flowers to praise her. Her joy comes from contributing to the garden's beauty. Similarly, a person with cosmic humility doesn't need constant validation. Their satisfaction comes from acting in harmony with the universe through reason and virtue. The desperate, ego-driven need to stand out, to be better than others, to prove your superiority, simply begins to seem small. It's a game designed for a tiny stage that you've now outgrown. Your energy is freed up for more meaningful connections and contributions, unburdened by the arrogant assumption that the universe is keeping score of your personal achievements. And this brings us to a truth that completely redefines the source of real happiness, our 18th Stoic reason to let go of the need for proof. Stoicism presents a radical idea that runs counter to almost everything our culture tells us. Genuine, lasting happiness, what the Greeks called eudaimonia, is not something you find, earn, or receive from the outside world. It is not a reward for achievement or a prize for impressing others. True flourishing is an internal state, a byproduct of living a life of virtue and reason. It is an inside job. This means that the entire exhausting project of proving yourself to others is not just unnecessary for happiness. It is actually a distraction from the very path that leads to it. You are searching for water in the desert with a full canteen strapped to your back. The Stoics made a crucial distinction between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is a fleeting sensation, a temporary spike of enjoyment from an external source, a delicious meal, a compliment, a financial win. It feels good in the moment, but it is dependent on things outside your control and vanishes quickly, often leaving you wanting more. Happiness, or eudaimonia, is something entirely different. It is a deep, enduring sense of fulfillment and well-being that comes from knowing you are living well. It is the satisfaction that comes from acting with courage in a difficult situation, from choosing justice when it would be easier to be unfair, from exercising wisdom in your decisions, and from practicing self-discipline with your desires. This kind of happiness is stable because its source is internal, your own character and choices, which are the only things you can truly command. Think about the last time you received a major piece of external validation, perhaps a public award, a glowing performance review, or a flood of positive comments on a social media post. Recall the initial thrill, the burst of pleasure. How long did that feeling last? An hour, a day? Sooner or later, the high faded, and you were left with yourself again, perhaps even feeling a subtle anxiety about how to replicate that feeling or a fear of not living up to the praise. Now contrast that with a time you did something difficult but right entirely for its own sake. Maybe you defended someone who was being treated unfairly, even though it was socially risky. Maybe you spent a weekend volunteering without telling anyone. Maybe you finally apologized for a past mistake you'd carried guilt about for years. That feeling, the quiet, solid warmth of self-respect that comes from such an action, is eudaimonia. It doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. It doesn't fade. It accumulates, building a foundation of inner confidence that no external event can easily shake. This is why the need to prove yourself is ultimately a dead end on the road to happiness. It chains your emotional state to the unpredictable and temporary world of externals. If your happiness depends on your boss thinking you're brilliant, you will be miserable every day they are in a bad mood. If your fulfillment depends on maintaining a certain social media image, you will be anxious every time a post doesn't perform well. You are handing the remote control for your inner peace to other people and to chance. The Stoic alternative is to reclaim that remote by shifting your focus inward, by making your primary goal the cultivation of virtue in each moment. You generate happiness from a source that never runs dry. You can find fulfillment in a traffic jam by practicing patience. You can find meaning in a boring task by practicing diligence. You can experience well-being even in hardship by facing it with courage. When your happiness is no longer for sale, requiring the currency of external validation, you become truly free to live, not just to perform. This profound shift in perspective invites us to consider a 19th and deeply freeing Stoic principle. The negative opinions others hold about you are ultimately their problem to manage, not yours. When someone judges you unfairly, dismisses your efforts, or questions your value, their reaction says far more about their own inner world, their insecurities, their past wounds, their limited perspective than it does about your actual worth. Stoicism teaches us that we are not responsible for the judgments others form in their own minds. We are only responsible for the integrity of our own actions and the reasonableness of our own judgments. To feel compelled to prove yourself in response to someone else's criticism is to mistakenly accept ownership of a problem that belongs entirely to them. Think of it like this: if you walked past a house and saw someone inside angrily yelling at their television, you wouldn't feel a personal responsibility to run inside and fix the television show to calm them down. You would recognize that their frustration is their own reaction to a stimulus, an internal issue they are responsible for managing. In the same way, when someone reacts to you with judgment or disdain, they are often just yelling at their own internal television. Their reaction is filtered through a unique lens of personal history, bias, and unmet needs that you did not create and cannot control. A boss who nitpicks your work might be projecting their own fear of failure. A colleague who dismisses your ideas might be protecting their own turf because they feel insecure about their contributions. A stranger's critical comment online almost always reflects their own unhappiness or desire to provoke a reaction. When you understand this, the urge to perform, to correct, to prove your value to this person simply loses its power. You can acknowledge their opinion as data about their state of mind without ever accepting it as a verdict on your character. This isn't about dismissing all feedback or becoming arrogant. A Stoic carefully evaluates criticism for useful truth, distinguishing between constructive feedback offered in good faith and mere judgment born of another person's baggage. If a trusted mentor points out a legitimate area for improvement, that feedback is a valuable tool for practicing the virtue of wisdom. But if the critique is simply an expression of someone else's envy, prejudice, or bad mood, to internalize it is to allow their internal storm to rain on your parade. Your energy is far better spent on your own continuous self-improvement than on launching a campaign to change one person's mind. You can remain calm and civil, not because you seek their approval, but because you understand that their negativity is their burden to carry and you refuse to shoulder it for them. This realization is the ultimate liberation from the approval-seeking cycle, allowing you to move through the world with a quiet confidence that is impervious to the unpredictable judgments of others. Imagine for a moment that every single day you make a quiet, unwavering commitment to act with integrity, to treat others with fairness, and to meet challenges with courage. There are no grand announcements, no social media posts showcasing your virtue, just a steady, consistent application of your principles in both the small, unseen moments and the large, public ones. Over time, this consistency builds something far more powerful than any single achievement or accolade ever could. It builds a reputation of rock-solid reliability that speaks for itself, making any additional effort to prove your worth completely redundant. This is the 20th profound Stoic reason you can let go of the need for external validation. When your character is your most consistent performance, the curtain simply falls on the need for a separate show. This concept finds its roots in the very practical teachings of Epictetus. He didn't ask his students to perform heroic, one-off acts of virtue to win admiration. Instead, he focused on the mundane, the daily, the utterly unglamorous. He instructed them to be more concerned with their own character than their reputation, because character is what you truly are, while reputation is merely what others think you are. He advised, if you wish to be a good person, convince yourself that you are a good person, and then act in a way that supports that belief. This isn't about self-deception, it's about self-creation through action. The consistent action is the proof. You don't need to tell people you are honest. They will know it from 1,000 small interactions where you chose honesty over convenience. You don't need to proclaim your loyalty. It will be evident in your unwavering support during difficult times. This consistency becomes your living resume, one that cannot be embellished or falsified. Consider the powerful contrast between two leaders. The first gives rousing speeches about ethics and transparency, but is later discovered cutting corners behind the scenes. Their words are a performance, a deliberate attempt to prove a worth they do not genuinely possess. When the inconsistency is revealed, their entire facade crumbles, and they must scramble to repair their image to prove themselves all over again. Now consider a second leader who may never give a grand speech on ethics, but whose every decision, from how they treat an intern to how they handle a budget shortfall, is guided by a clear and consistent moral compass. They don't need to prove their integrity. It is demonstrated day in and day out through a pattern of behavior so reliable it becomes predictable. Their team trusts them not because of what they say, but because of what they consistently do. This leader is liberated from the exhausting work of image management. Their energy is directed entirely toward their work and their principles, not toward convincing others of their value. This is the ultimate efficiency of a Stoic life. The effort you might have spent on crafting an image, networking for approval, or anxiously monitoring your social standing is instead reinvested into the one thing that actually matters, the quality of your actions. You are no longer living a double life, one internal and one for external consumption. There is only one life lived in alignment. This unity between belief and action creates a profound sense of inner peace and authenticity that is palpable to others. People are drawn to this consistency because it is rare and incredibly trustworthy. They know what to expect from you, not because you are predictable in a boring way, but because you are reliable in a deeply moral way. Your consistent virtue overrides the need for proof because the proof is embedded in the very fabric of your being, evident in every choice you make. The need to say, "I am capable," is replaced by the demonstrable fact that you handle your responsibilities competently. The urge to declare, "I am kind," is made irrelevant by the steady stream of considerate actions others experience from you. You are not collecting evidence of your worth to present at a trial. You are living a life that makes the trial unnecessary. The verdict is delivered not by a jury of your peers, but by the quiet, unassailable certainty of your own character. Think about the most restrictive form of slavery you can imagine. Now consider that the Stoics identified a version of this bondage that is entirely internal and self-imposed, the fear of judgment. This 21st reason cuts to the very core of why proving yourself is so draining. It makes you a slave, voluntarily handing over the keys to your own mental and emotional freedom to anyone who happens to have an opinion about you. The ancient Stoics argued that seeking approval isn't just a bad habit. It's a form of psychological servitude where you chain your sense of self-worth to the unpredictable and often irrational whims of other people. Epictetus, who knew the reality of physical slavery before earning his freedom, spoke with unparalleled authority on this subject. He drew a sharp distinction between the two, noting that while his body had once been owned by another, his mind had always remained his own. He taught that true slavery isn't about who owns your body, but about who owns your mind. When you live in constant fear of what others think, you are effectively making them your master. You grant them the power to dictate your mood, your choices, and your self-esteem. Your every action becomes a calculation aimed at pleasing your master to avoid the whip of disapproval or earn the treat of praise. This is a life lived in a cage of your own making, constantly looking through the bars to see if the keeper is pleased. The path to liberation, according to Stoic doctrine, is not to rebel against your masters, but to realize they were never your masters to begin with. Freedom is an internal state achieved the moment you stop valuing external judgment above your own reasoned assessment. It comes from embracing your own standards and values as the ultimate authority on your life. Marcus Aurelius, despite his immense power, constantly practiced this. He would retreat into his own mind and ask himself a simple, powerful question. What is it in itself and by itself? What is its nature and substance? He was training himself to see things, including criticism and praise, for what they truly were, not for the emotional weight others tried to assign to them. An insult, when examined dispassionately, is just a collection of sounds or marks on a page. It has no inherent power to harm you unless you grant it that power by agreeing with its assessment. By choosing your own values as your guide, you dethrone the opinion of others. Their words become mere suggestions or observations from the outside, which you are free to evaluate with your own rational faculty and then accept or dismiss. This is the moment the chains fall away. You are no longer a slave reacting to every command from the outside world. You are a free person acting from your own volition and principles. This freedom manifests in quiet, powerful ways. It's the ability to wear the clothes you find comfortable without anxiety about whether they are fashionable enough. It's the courage to passionately defend an unpopular idea you believe in because your commitment to truth outweighs your desire for social harmony. It's the peace to walk away from a heated argument, not because you are afraid of losing, but because you refuse to be enslaved by the need to win it. The person who has broken these chains no longer feels a compulsive need to share their accomplishments because their sense of pride is internal and complete. They don't experience a social snub as a personal catastrophe, but as a simple day to point about another person's behavior. This isn't a cold or isolated existence. In fact, it allows for warmer, more genuine connections. Your relationships are no longer transactions where you provide performance in exchange for validation. They become authentic bonds based on mutual respect because you are engaging with others as a whole, free individual, not as a servant seeking favor. The Stoic ideal is to be a sovereign self, ruling your inner kingdom with wisdom and justice, and treating the cheers and boos from outside the castle walls as the fleeting noise they are, utterly incapable of dictating your laws or shaking your foundation. The endless effort to prove yourself is almost always a project focused on the future, a promise that one day, when you have achieved enough or impressed the right people, you will finally feel secure and worthy. But this entire endeavor pulls you out of the only moment you ever truly possess or control, the present. This is our 22nd powerful reason to let go of that burden. Stoicism directs our attention relentlessly to the here and now, arguing that a life spent performing for a future reward is a life missed entirely. The philosopher Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of philosophy to daily living, put it with stark clarity: "We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied but wasteful of it. We are not keeping to the road but wandering." When you are consumed with proving your worth, you are wandering from the only road available to you, the present moment where your power to act virtuously actually exists. Think about how this plays out in a common scenario. Imagine you're in a work meeting and a colleague presents an idea that you think is flawed. The urge to prove yourself might pull your mind into the future. You start crafting the perfect rebuttal, imagining how you will sound intelligent and decisive, how you will win the approval of your boss, and how this moment will solidify your reputation as a sharp, critical thinker. While you are lost in this future-focused fantasy, the actual meeting is happening without you. You might miss a crucial nuance in the discussion, overlook a better solution that emerges from collaboration, or fail to listen to someone else's point because you're so busy rehearsing your own performance. Your desire to prove your intelligence in some future moment has actually made you less intelligent and less effective in the present moment, which is the only place where you could have made a genuine contribution. Epictetus taught that our chief task is to attend to our faculty of choice, our ability to use our reason to respond to impressions rightly, and this can only be done right now. He said, "For it's not death or pain that is to be feared, but the fear of pain or death. Similarly, it is not the future judgment of others that is the problem, but our present fear of it and our present choice to cater to it." Your power does not lie in controlling how your actions will be perceived 5 minutes or 5 days from now. It lies entirely in your choice of how to act in this very second. Do you choose to speak with honesty or with flattery? Do you choose to listen with curiosity or with competitive ego? Do you choose to act with courage or with cowardice? These are present moment decisions. The compulsive need to prove yourself is a thief that steals these moments from you. replacing the rich, immediate experience of living virtuously with an anxious, abstract rehearsal for a play that may never even happen. The profound liberation here is that the present moment is an arena where you are always fully equipped. You don't need a better resume, more charisma, or a higher IQ to act with integrity right now. You simply need to choose it. The pressure to prove yourself vanishes when you stop projecting into a future you cannot control and instead pour all of your energy into mastering the one thing you can, your response to the situation directly in front of you. This is how you build a life of substance, not through a grand future plan to become someone impressive, but through 1,000 small, present-moment choices to be a person of character. The future will take care of itself, as it is merely a string of present moments to come. By being fully present and virtuous in this one, you are not only living your life to its fullest, you are also building the only kind of reputation that ever truly lasts, one action at a time. In our culture, we often mistake humility for a lack of confidence or a weakness to be overcome, believing that to get ahead we must loudly proclaim our own value. Stoicism turns this notion on its head, presenting humility not as self-deprecation, but as a profound strength and a crucial virtue that naturally extinguishes the compulsive need to prove yourself. The Stoic humble person isn't someone who thinks less of themselves, they simply think of themselves less. Their focus shifts from a constant, inward-looking concern with their own image to an outward engagement with the world, with other people, and with the principles of reason and virtue. This shift is incredibly liberating. When you are no longer the star of your own movie, anxiously monitoring your reviews, you are free to actually participate in the production, to learn, to connect, and to contribute without the distorting filter of your own ego. Consider the difference between two experts in a field. The first, driven by a need to prove their expertise, enters every conversation ready to hold court. They listen only to find an opening to interject with their own knowledge. They subtly correct minor errors in others' statements to showcase their superior understanding, and they leave interactions having defended their status but having learned nothing new. The second expert, grounded in Stoic humility, enters the same conversation with a quiet confidence that requires no external validation. They listen with genuine curiosity, asking questions to understand deeper, acknowledging the contributions of others, and sharing their own knowledge only when it genuinely adds to the discussion. Their lack of posturing doesn't diminish their expertise, it makes it more accessible and far more powerful. People leave the conversation not thinking, "That person is so smart," but rather, "I understand this so much better now," which is a far greater compliment to the expert's true skill. The humble Stoic isn't focused on being seen as the smartest person in the room. They are focused on the shared pursuit of wisdom, which is a collaborative, not a competitive endeavor. This humility is rooted in a sincere recognition of our own limitations and the vastness of what we do not know. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, constantly reminded himself of this. He wrote, "If anyone can show me and prove to me that I am wrong in thought or deed, I will gladly change. I seek the truth which never harmed anyone." This is the essence of Stoic humility. It is an active, open-minded readiness to be corrected. It views criticism not as a personal attack to be deflected, but as a potential gift of clarity to be gratefully received. This mindset makes the need to prove yourself completely obsolete. Why would you need to defend a position you might be wrong about? Why would you cling to an idea just because it's yours? The humble person is more committed to being right in the end than to being right in the moment. This creates an incredible capacity for growth and self-improvement, as every interaction becomes an opportunity to learn rather than a stage to perform. Furthermore, Stoic humility fosters genuine, trusting connections with others. Arrogance and a constant need to prove your superiority build walls. They signal to others that you are in a competition they didn't agree to join. Humility, by contrast, builds bridges. It makes you approachable, relatable, and safe to be around. people are instinctively drawn to those who don't feel the need to constantly assert their dominance or intelligence. They feel seen and valued in your presence because your attention is on them and the shared task, not on your own self-promotion. This is how humility becomes a source of true influence and leadership. People will follow a humble leader who values their contribution far more loyally than they will follow a brilliant braggart who makes them feel insignificant. Your strength is no longer something you have to prove through force of personality. It becomes evident through the respect you garner and the collaborative results you achieve, all without ever having to announce your own importance. The compulsion to prove ourselves often arises from a simple yet destructive habit: looking sideways. We measure our progress against the path of a colleague, our possessions against a neighbor's, our quiet struggles against the curated highlight reels of strangers online. But Stoicism offers a powerful antidote to this toxic comparison: the unshakable understanding that your journey is entirely your own, a unique and unrepeatable expression of your particular circumstances, talents, and challenges. There is no universal timeline for success, no single metric for a life well lived, and therefore, no legitimate basis for comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20. When you truly embrace this, the very impulse to prove your worth by outperforming others begins to lose its power, replaced by a focused commitment to walking your own path with integrity. Consider the Stoic concept of the daemon, or inner guiding spirit. This isn't a mystical entity, but rather the unique combination of your rational faculty and your innate potential. Each person's daemon is different, with its own purpose and its own course to run. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly, writing, "Be satisfied with even the smallest progress and treat the outcome of it all as unimportant." He wasn't advocating for low standards, but for a personal standard. The only measure that matters is whether you're moving forward on your own path, using your own gifts, and overcoming your own specific obstacles. The farmer does not judge the success of his harvest by the height of the blacksmith's chimney smoke. Each has a different craft, a different soil to tend, a different definition of a good day's work. In the same way, your journey, with its unique setbacks, its personal victories, its quiet moments of growth, is an incomparable project. To hold it up against another's is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of life itself. This perspective is incredibly liberating when applied to the modern world of social media, where comparison is not just encouraged but engineered into the platform. You see a former classmate celebrating a professional milestone you haven't reached and feel a pang of inadequacy, but the Stoic asks a different set of questions. What unseen struggles did they endure to get there? What sacrifices did they make that you might not be willing to make? More importantly, is that specific milestone even aligned with your daemon, with your own true nature and values? Perhaps your path requires a slower, more deliberate pace to build a foundation of deeper meaning. Perhaps your greatest victories are occurring in the private realm of your character, in cultivating more patience with your children, in overcoming a personal fear, in learning a new skill for the pure joy of it. Victories that will never generate a congratulatory comment online, but that are infinitely more valuable to the architecture of your soul. Your journey is not being lived for an audience, it is being lived for you. The only report card that counts is the one you write for yourself, based on your honest effort and your alignment with virtue, not on any external benchmark. This focus on your unique path allows you to finally celebrate the successes of others without feeling that their light dims your own. Their good fortune is simply evidence that their path is unfolding according to its own logic. It provides no data about the quality or speed of your own. You can feel genuine joy for a friend's promotion without turning it into a criticism of your own career. You can admire an artist's beautiful work without using it as a reason to abandon your own creative pursuits. This shift from competition to appreciation creates richer, more authentic relationships and frees up a massive amount of mental energy previously wasted on envy and self-recrimination. That energy can now be channeled inward into the only project that has ever truly mattered, the steadfast and courageous cultivation of your own character, one unique step at a time. And so we arrive at the final and perhaps most sobering of the Stoic reasons. Death levels all, rendering our external achievements and the proof we so desperately sought utterly meaningless. This is not a morbid fixation, but a liberating confrontation with the ultimate truth that strips away all pretense and forces us to consider what is genuinely, enduringly important. The Stoic practice of Memento Mori, remembering you must die, reaches its profound conclusion here, serving as the ultimate filter for our actions and ambitions. In the silent, equalizing face of mortality, the trophies on the shelf, the letters after your name, the size of your bank account, and the applause of the crowd are revealed for what they always were, temporary props in a play that always had a final curtain. What remains when all that is stripped away? Only the character you built, the virtue you practiced, and the integrity with which you lived. Death does not care about your resume, it cares only about the content of your soul. Consider the fate of the most powerful and celebrated figures from history. The Roman emperors who commanded armies and built colossal monuments, the pharaohs who were buried with unimaginable riches to prove their divinity in the afterlife, where are their proofs now? Their palaces are tourist attractions, their treasures are behind glass in museums, their names are in books read by a fraction of the people who once knew them. Their worldly achievements, which must have felt so monumentally important in the moment, have been reduced to historical footnotes. The Stoics ask us to hold this perspective not to create despair, but to create a powerful sense of perspective and priority. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this constantly, urging himself to think of the entire court of Augustus, a place of immense power, intrigue, and striving, and to realize that all those people are now dust and stories. He wrote, "Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both. In the end, the general and the foot soldier, the CEO and the intern, the famous artist and the unknown one, all share the same fate. The playing field is ultimately leveled not by wealth or fame, but by mortality itself. This realization is the ultimate antidote to the anxiety of proving yourself. When you truly internalize that you and everyone whose opinion you care about will one day be gone, the entire performance can suddenly seem absurd. Why exhaust yourself trying to climb a ladder that leads to a platform that will eventually vanish? Why spend your precious, limited days collecting validation tokens that will hold no value in the final accounting? This isn't a call to inaction or passivity, it's a call to right action. It frees you to redirect your energy from the ephemeral to the eternal, from the pursuit of external markers of success to the cultivation of inner virtue, which is the only thing that death cannot touch. A kind act reverberates through time in its effects on others. A moment of courage becomes part of the fabric of reality. A life lived with justice and wisdom leaves an imprint on the world that is qualitative, not quantitative, and therefore immune to the erasure of time. Think of it as the difference between building a sandcastle and carving a riverbed. The sandcastle is your external proof. It can be elaborate, impressive, and admired by everyone on the beach. But you know, even as you build it, that the tide will eventually come in and wash it away without a trace. The riverbed, however, is your character. It is formed slowly, consistently, by the daily flow of your choices. It is not built for show, it is shaped for function and permanence. Long after the water is gone, the course it carved remains, guiding the flow of everything that comes after. The Stoic chooses to be the riverbed, not the sandcastle. Your legacy is not what you built out there, but who you became in here, and how that inner state guided your impact on the world. In the face of death, the only thing that isn't leveled is the quality of your soul. That is the only project worth your time, the only proof that ever truly mattered, and the only thing that makes your brief, magnificent journey through this life a thing of beauty, regardless of who was watching. So we've journeyed through 25 powerful Stoic reasons why you no longer need to prove yourself. From recognizing your inherent self-worth and the futility of seeking external validation, to embracing the liberating power of virtue as its own reward, the foolishness of comparison, and the profound peace found in focusing only on what you can control. We've seen how authenticity trumps approval, how simplicity shrinks the need for proof, and how the consistent practice of character makes any performance for others completely unnecessary. We reflected on the instability of public opinion, the hollow chase of fame, and the way humility and cosmic perspective quiet the noisy ego. We considered how death, the ultimate equalizer, makes all external validation meaningless, leaving only the quality of our character as the true measure of a life. Each of these insights is a thread in a larger tapestry, a Stoic blueprint for emotional freedom. Together, they form a compelling case that the urge to prove yourself is not a path to success or happiness, but a distraction from it. It's a chase that pulls you away from your own life, your own values, and your own peace. But by internalizing these principles, you can step off that exhausting treadmill for good. You can stop performing and start living. You can trade the anxiety of external validation for the quiet confidence that comes from within. The goal is not to become indifferent to the world, but to engage with it more fully from a place of strength, not need. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 25 reasons resonated most deeply? Was it the idea that your worth is inherent, or the practice of Memento Mori that puts everything into perspective? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and learn from each other's experiences. If this video brought you value and you're ready to go deeper, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're building a community here dedicated to practical wisdom, resilience, and living a more meaningful life, and I'd be honored to have you join us. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are enough exactly as you are right now. Your only task is to live like you believe it.